Aliens could barely recall a time when they refrained from visiting Earth to abduct humans, whether for food, fun, or experiments. However, they would never forget the day humans finally fought back. For humanity, it was July 7th, 2045, but for the foremost alien empire, it became known as the Earthling Chaos. In the Memorial Hall of the Empire, the names of those slain that day were engraved on a monument made of pure memorite, marking their casualties when humans tore their ships apart using weapons centuries behind alien technology. The bat-like Veer frightened their young with chilling tales of the horrors inflicted by humans who sought to purge their planet of invaders. Across the galaxy, the event was dubbed the Day of Retribution, as many other species long subjected to the Empire's raids rejoiced at hearing of Earthlings delivering a powerful blow to the oppressors. Yet, no alien could have foreseen that it all began with one man whose luck had abandoned him long ago. Larry Summons had always been an unlucky man, but waking up in the bowels of an alien ship made him realize there was no limit to his misfortune. His life had been a series of tragic losses: friends in the Third Gulf War, his job upon returning to the States, his wife caught with the neighbor, and shortly thereafter, his home and money. Left destitute, he'd spent months sleeping in his car until even that was repossessed. Out of options, Larry resorted to the streets, expecting to die there. Instead, he woke up naked and cold, restrained against a metal surface. The harsh light of the ship revealed a gray metal ceiling, etched with strange markings like alien hieroglyphs. The air thrummed with an unsettling energy, smelling of ozone and blood. Larry couldn't move his arms or legs, his body bound tightly by unseen restraints. Memories of the horrifying alien abductions that had plagued humanity since 2030 flooded his mind. UFOs had brazenly appeared in major cities, abducting humans with beams of light, leaving the military powerless to intervene. Those who returned were broken mentally or physically shattered. Others came back in pieces or horrifyingly altered, with strange growths or limbs grafted onto their bodies. Larry wondered whether he had been taken during one of the aliens' daring raids or had simply vanished like so many others. As panic consumed him, a cough broke his thoughts. Expecting to see an alien face, he was startled to hear a weak human voice instead. "Hey, you awake?" called an elderly man lying on a similar table, his chest covered in thin red surgical lines from some recent procedure. Larry struggled to turn his head, eventually meeting the man's watery eyes. The chamber was filled with alien devices and containers, illuminated by an eerie glow. The old man was strangely unrestrained, lying free on the table. "Why don't you get up and help me out of these restraints?" Larry asked, his voice strained. The old man, confusion etched on his face, replied with a cryptic expression, leaving Larry bewildered. "What are you talking about?" "You're not restrained," Larry said. "Then how come I can't move?" Larry asked. "Muscle paralysis or some kind of force field. That's my guess," the old man replied. "Think about it. Do you actually feel anything holding your arms and legs down?" Larry had to admit he didn't. He simply couldn't move them. But oddly enough, he could still move his head. "What's with the red marks on you?" "What did they do to you?" Larry asked. The old man let out a weak laugh. "Wish I knew. They cut me open, poked around inside, took out a thing or two, put them in jars and stitched me back up," he said, his face tightening. "It hurt. A lot. Best prepare yourself for some pain, boy." "Pain's been a constant in my life," Larry muttered. "What about you? Are you holding up okay? People don't usually fare well after losing parts of themselves." "No, they don't," the old man said, a resigned smile creeping onto his face. "But I doubt it matters much anymore. Ever been on a farm, boy?" "No," Larry replied. "I have," the old man said. "I've been a farmer my whole life. Been stuck in this room for weeks now. They come in, jam tubes into me, take stuff out, put stuff in. It's like livestock. A good farmer takes care of their animals, even if they know those animals are destined for slaughter. But these things, they treat us worse than animals. And to them, that's all we are. Maybe, Larry said, his lips curling into a faint smile. But if they were out hunting cattle, they really messed up this time. All they got was a devil dog with nothing left to lose. The old man laughed weakly. You're a fiery one, huh? I like that, Kitty said. Before Larry could respond, the hatch on the wall hissed and began to open. The metal iris retracted with a sound like grinding gears, and two small humanoid figures waddled in, pushing a cart laden with ominous tools. Some looked razor sharp, others glowed faintly, but all appeared designed to inflict pain. The aliens resembled the classic gray figures from old sci-fi movies: thin, spindly limbs, oversized heads, black eyes, gray skin, and small mouths. They would have looked laughable if they hadn't rendered Larry paralyzed and helpless. Gritting his teeth, he tried again to move his arms, legs, anything, but nothing responded. These two again, the old man said. Or maybe it's not always them. Maybe they all look the same. Doesn't matter. They'll poke and prod for a while before things get real nasty. The aliens inspected their tools, each movement precise and deliberate. The old man swallowed hard and said, If it's not too much trouble, can I ask you for a favor? Sure, Larry said, still straining against his invisible restraints. The old man recited an address. If you get out of here and you're still able to talk, can you check on my dog? Her name's Star. She's a terrible watchdog, way too friendly. But she means a lot to me, he said, his voice tinged with desperation. Larry didn't have the heart to tell the man that if he'd been gone for weeks, his dog was likely long dead. Sure, he said, his focus locked on the aliens, one of whom was now fiddling with glowing panels on the side of the table. The displays shimmered into existence, then vanished as the alien adjusted them. The old man sighed with relief. She won't give you any trouble. I know I wasn't great at naming, but she's... His words were cut off when one of the aliens produced a translucent tube and abruptly shoved it down his throat. Muffled screams and choking sounds filled the room as his head thrashed violently, the rest of his body held fast by the table's mysterious force. Larry froze, watching in horrified fascination. The second alien picked up a glowing, curved scalpel, its blade glowing red as it flicked a switch. Satisfied, the alien turned to the old man and began its gruesome work. Larry had seen horror before the aftermath of bombs, shattered markets, but nothing compared to this. Knife attacks in the streets had revealed horrors no one should ever witness, but none of that compared to what Larry saw the alien do to the old man. Flaps of skin were meticulously peeled away, bones sliced through, and every organ removed, not one or two, but all of them. Larry was watching a vivisection, and even his war-hardened stomach churned at the sight. The old man tried to scream, but the tube down his throat muffled every sound. Finally, his struggles ceased. The old man, who had endured weeks of torment in this alien nightmare, was no more. The only part of him that could move his head now lay still, his eyes closed, as the aliens continued their grisly task, oblivious to his death. Larry stared, and something deep within him began to boil. Then he heard the aliens emit a strange chittering noise as they moved around the table. It didn't take much for Larry to realize they were laughing. Laughing over the death and mutilation of a man. The boiling anger within him spread like wildfire, his heart pounding faster and faster. Flashes of his past flooded his mind, bleeding bodies on the sand, the piercing cries carried by scorching winds, and the relentless cacophony of gunfire. Memories of personal pain seeped in the look of disgust from his ex-wife, the hollow words of his boss letting him go, the cold nights spent in his car with only a bottle for company. And now, standing before him, were these two monsters, mocking the suffering of a good man. Something snapped inside Larry, like a boiler rupturing under too much pressure. Whatever invisible force had kept him pinned to the table was no match for the sheer fury that erupted from his core. A primal scream tore from his throat, loud and guttural, but the aliens didn't even flinch. Their arrogance sealed their fate. Larry exploded off the table, grabbing both aliens by their bulbous heads. His mind was gone, consumed by pure rage and instinct, and both screamed only one command: kill. He slammed the aliens against the table's edge repeatedly until their oversized skulls burst open, spilling gray-black fluids down his arms. A distant part of Larry's mind noted how frail they were, so easy to break, like cheap toys. Their bodies spasmed briefly before going limp. Without hesitation, Larry discarded the corpses as carelessly as they had treated the old man. The rage subsided, giving him a moment to think. He turned to the old man, mutilated beyond recognition, with nothing to cover his body. Bowing his head, Larry gave him a moment of silence before tearing through the room in search of a way out. He found his clothes, sealed in flimsy plastic adorned with alien glyphs. Ripping the package open, he quickly dressed, relieved to no longer be naked in this nightmare. He stuffed the most dangerous-looking tools from the alien cart into his pockets, keeping the glowing scalpel ready in his hand. Larry noticed the iris door was still open and crept into the ship's curved hall, where a low mist clung to the floor. He didn't know how long he prowled the humid corridors, but his fury guided him. The ship became a battleground. If an alien crossed his path, they didn't survive. Each time one stared at him, Larry felt a strange compulsion to lie down and surrender, but his rage obliterated the feeling. Aliens wielded batons that sparked with electricity, but he ripped them away and shoved them, still active, down their throats. They convulsed and burned as Larry laughed and moved on. Those with guns barely had time to aim before their wrists shattered under his strikes, their throats collapsing moments later. Though time had weathered Larry, he was still a force to be reckoned with, a Marine Corps martial arts program McMap brown belt. In the ship's tight confines, he was too quick, too deadly for the alien crew to match. Each blow felt like an awakening, stirring a part of him he had buried long ago. As he emerged from the haze of old memories, Larry picked up one of the alien guns, his grip firm with purpose. Larry inspected the weapon, which looked more like a child's toy than a dangerous tool. He aimed it down the corridor and pulled the trigger experimentally. Nothing happened. Frowning, he tossed it aside. Some kind of safety lock, he muttered. Good thing he didn't need it. Eventually, Larry came to a door that was different from the others. Unlike the iris-style doors scattered throughout the ship, this one resembled a traditional hatch and was surrounded by far more intricate alien markings. Like the rest of the ship's doors, there was no visible control panel to open it. Larry paused, thinking. He recalled how the doors back in the dissection room had opened automatically as the aliens approached them. Snapping his fingers, he turned back, grabbed one of the alien corpses from the hallway, and dragged it to the hatch. Tossing the body forward, he watched as the door emitted a strange hum before sliding up into the ceiling. Just as he'd suspected, the doors reacted to alien proximity. Beyond the hatch was what appeared to be the ship's control center. Displays and monitors covered the walls, pulsing with alien glyphs and patterns, all arranged around a central chair. Occupying that chair was another alien, a gray, but different. Its grotesquely oversized head was swollen with bumps and veins, pulsing sickly as Larry approached. The chair seemed custom-built to support the creature, with its upper portion cradling the enormous cranium while clusters of dark cables extended from its head to the control stations around the room. The alien weakly flailed its arms, clearly unable to move much. Looking for help, Larry asked, cracking his knuckles as he approached. "You're going to be waiting a long time." "Stop, human," a voice suddenly echoed, not in Larry's ears but in his mind. Startled, he realized it was the alien communicating telepathically. None of the others had tried to communicate before, even non-verbally. Larry scowled. "Why should I?" he growled, stepping closer. "Great benefit," the alien wheezed into his thoughts. "Spare me. Take whatever you want, gifts, weapons, cures, knowledge. Ship and I connected. Kill me, ship dies, you die." Larry tilted his head, considering the offer as he took another step. "Interesting proposition," he said coldly, watching the alien squirm in its chair. "But here's the problem. Little guy, I don't have a home anymore. I don't have anything. All I've got is a grudge against creatures like you. Cruel, torturous bastards." He snapped his fingers again, causing the alien to flinch. "Even if you gave me everything, I wouldn't trust you. The moment you get the chance, you'd stab me in the back." Leaning in, Larry whispered into the alien's ear, "There's one lesson life has taught me: you can't trust a son of a bitch." The alien let out a psychic screech just as Larry descended upon it. His fists slammed into the frail creature again and again, breaking bones, crushing cartilage, and pulping its flesh. Each blow only fueled Larry's fury, every ounce of rage and suffering from his lifetime pouring into his strikes. The alien's screams diminished into weak moans, but Larry barely noticed, lost in the red haze of his wrath. Suddenly, alien chittering filled the room. The displays lit up, showing live feeds from other ships. On the screens, other large-headed aliens writhed in pain, clutching their swollen skulls while their crew frantically worked the controls around them. Larry didn't understand exactly what he had done, but he knew it was something massive. Unbeknownst to him, the creature he had just beaten to death was a highly psychic scalar, a member of the foremost Empire's navigators. These scalars maintained a vast psionic network that controlled communication, coordination, navigation, and even the ship's internal systems. By unleashing his rage on one of the scalars, Larry had inadvertently sent a shockwave of fury and pain through the entire network, like a virus spreading chaos. Across the fleet of alien ships near Earth, scalars shrieked as Larry's uncontrollable rage overwhelmed their sensitive psychic minds. The fury burned through their synapses like wildfire, tearing apart their orderly, logical thought processes with raw, unbridled hatred. Blood and ichor spilled from their orifices as their organs failed under the strain. They convulsed violently, collapsing in seizures as their shipmates struggled to understand what was happening. One by one, the scalars died, taking their psionic networks with them. Without centralized control, the ships went haywire. UFOs hovered erratically in the skies above Earth, some crashing into mountains, forests, and plains as conflicting commands drove them into the ground. Others uncloaked and froze in place, leaving themselves exposed to missile strikes and anti-air fire. Human interceptors took to the skies en masse, finally given the opportunity to retaliate against the vulnerable invaders. Larry stood amidst the carnage he had unleashed, unaware of the full extent of his actions but smiling grimly as he prepared to continue his warpath. The psychic fields holding the abductees down abruptly disappeared, leaving the aliens in the midst of their cruel experiments facing the full fury of their former captives. Humans leaped from the dissection tables, turning the tables on their tormentors in a grim reenactment of how the uprising had begun. Chaos erupted across the globe as humanity seized the opportunity to retaliate against the invaders who had terrorized them for years, and they did so with unrelenting vengeance. While humans exacted their revenge, the scalar navigators, the psychic nodes of the alien fleet, slumped lifelessly in their chairs, their bodies quickly beginning to decay. On the few ships that managed to flee into space, the remaining alien crew were exterminated out of fear that the so-called mind virus might spread further. The foremost spared no kindness, even for their own servants. Larry, quite literally, had hated the aliens to death. That thought kept him steady as he watched Earth grow larger on the displays. For the first time in years, Larry felt a sense of peace. It didn't matter that it was all about to end. He'd done everything he could, and for once it felt like enough. Warning glyphs flashed red across the ship's panels as it re-entered Earth's atmosphere, but Larry didn't flinch. He didn't know how to control the ship, and he was fine with letting it all end. Then a thought struck him. He had briefly glimpsed the controls when the displays showed the frantic aliens piloting their own spiraling ships. He remembered seeing a cluster of levers and buttons on the left console. Calmly, he approached the panel and began testing the controls. Dying while attempting to fly an alien spacecraft felt more dignified than simply watching it crash. With deliberate movements, Larry pulled levers, pushed buttons, and maneuvered what he assumed was the control stick. As the UFO descended towards Selfridge Air National Guard Base, it wobbled erratically. Its lack of grace and the sporadic slowing and speeding up made targeting it nearly impossible for the base's defensive systems. Assuming the craft had already been brought down by another force, the gunners hesitated, unsure whether to fire. Some launched missiles anyway, but the ship's automated systems released a glittering gas that caused the projectiles to detonate prematurely. Finally, the UFO plummeted straight down, not quite a crash and not quite a landing. As the ship settled awkwardly on the base grounds, soldiers swarmed out of the armory, ready with rifles and grenades. Their discipline held, however, as the main hatch hissed open. From within, a figure emerged splattered in black alien blood and swaying unsteadily. Larry Salmon stumbled out of the UFO and collapsed onto the freshly cut grass. His final, cryptic words before slipping into unconsciousness were incomprehensible to the troops who surrounded him. Shed. In the chair. Force. Makes it. Then he drifted into peaceful darkness. When Larry awoke, he was met with an endless line of people in suits eager to speak with him. His face had become famous overnight, thanks to footage of him bludgeoning the alien controller to death, images captured from displays aboard downed UFOs. Government leaders were desperate to understand exactly what Larry had done. Though Larry himself wasn't entirely sure, he retold his story over and over again. By the 20th retelling, it had grown tiresome, and he suspected the repetition was intentional, designed to ensure his account never changed. By the 30th time, they finally gave him a room on base and told him to rest. Meanwhile, Earth's military forces swept the globe clean of alien remnants. Nations of all sizes collected their trophies from the alien conflict: crashed ships, advanced technology, and pieces of alien biology. Secret labs hoarded the spoils, while alien organs and liquids sold for exorbitant sums on black markets. Ironically, the aliens who once treated humans like livestock now found themselves reduced to commodities. Larry, however, had more personal matters to attend to. He found himself at the old farmhouse that had belonged to the abducted man he'd met on the alien ship. The house was well maintained, though the farm had clearly been neglected in the weeks since its owner's disappearance. Larry sighed in relief. At least there were no starving cattle to deal with. Finding the key where the old man had said it would be in a mailbox engraved with the name McPherson, Larry unlocked the door. He barely had time to step inside before a whirlwind of fur burst past him, barking and yipping. A Shetland sheepdog leaped on him, licking his face and pawing at him excitedly. Larry blinked in surprise. The dog was alive against all odds. Inside, he spotted a torn-open bag of dog food, nearly empty. Chuckling, he looked down at the ecstatic dog. "Guess you got tired of waiting and helped yourself, huh?" he said, scratching the dog behind the ears. "Don't want to know where you've been getting water, though." Tentatively, Larry commanded Star. Sit. The dog immediately obeyed, sitting and panting, her tail wagging furiously. "Sorry, girl," Larry said, patting his pockets. "No treats today. Let's see if your master left some behind." He rummaged through the cabinets, eventually finding a crinkled bag of dog treats, which he offered to Star. As he fed her, Larry considered the possibility of claiming the property. It didn't seem like the old man had any relatives, and no one had checked on the farm. Maybe Larry could use his newfound influence to buy the place. After all, saving the world had to count for something. Smiling to himself, he scratched Star behind the ears again. Maybe his bad luck had finally run out. Then, with the dog happily munching her treats, Larry picked up his phone to make a call and see if pets were allowed on base.